Father, could you please tell us a story about Canada?
Yeah, I want to know about the great place that we live in.
Why? Canada's history is so boring. Why don't we talk about something cool like Europe or the United States?
Settle down, kids. I'd love to read my book of Canada. And just you wait, Kevin. Canada has a very interesting past.
Whatever, dude.
Are you ready, Jimmy?
Yes, Father.
Are you ready, Rajesh?
Hell yeah.
Okay, kids, I'm going to skip ahead to the 1860s, during the Canadian Confederation. The 1st of July, 1867, was when the Canadian Confederation was created. It created a series of conferences and orderly negotiations, culminating in the terms. The Confederation was necessary for a country that ranged coast to coast. The Canadian Confederation is put into idea for several reasons, but the main reason being to pressure the American seizure, world trade, and railways. After many tries to gather the provinces, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Ontario, Quebec, they had one last meeting for the Confederation during the London Conference in London, England, where they signed the Confederation.
Wow! And this is how Canada became the place we know today?
No, silly boy. My son, this is just the very beginning of how Canada became the home that we know it is today.
Wait, but you said earlier that we could have skipped to the 1860s. What happened before the 1860s?
Genocide. The Europeans came. This is why Europeans' history is way cooler than Canadian history. Our history is because four people signed a piece of paper. Not as cool as conquering land, you know?
Actually, Kevin, if it wasn't for Columbus discovering India, Canada wouldn't be the place that it is.
Yeah, well, duh.
Exactly. Columbus and the Europeans' migration to America is therefore considered to be a pivotal story of Canadian history.
Yeah, well, you see, yeah.
Kids, the story's not the greatest. This shows blood, killing, and death, of which our country was built upon.
Wait, actually?
Cool. No, it wasn't cool, Rajesh. But for you to understand this full story, I'm gonna go start in the 1490s.
I have found India. Hello there, young man. Do you have any spices? Spices, like the stuff on tapas from Spain. Boys, I just think we hit the jackpot. I think we did.
This land is your land, and this land is my land, from California. This land is your land, and this land is my land, from California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest.
Many choices were made. Many steps were taken for Canada to achieve and become what it is today. Nobody is perfect. It takes mistakes to make a change. It takes time to create a change. Failure is the mother of success. Canada, being able to accept its mistake and move on, and taking approaches to create change and create equality in the society that we live in, is truly what makes Canada what it is today. All right, boys. Now we're going to move on to the next chapter of Canada. Remember what I told you about coast to coast?
Yeah.
Hey, Jimmy, do you know what province we live in?
Yeah, I think, British Columbia?
That's correct. We actually have a funny story of how we joined this country. So we're going to fast forward to the 1870s.
Can I read the story for a change, Dad?
Yeah, why don't you tell us the story of the 1870s?
Wow.
We as Canada have one goal, to become a united coast-to-coast country. Now, we're just missing one Pacific province. Hey, BC, come here.
Yes, Canada.
Would you like to join Canada as another province?
Why should we join you? We have three options. We could join Canada, we could join the United States, or we could be an independent country.
The only reason the United States wants you is so they have an easier
route to Alaska.
I'm sure there's much more to it.
We will offer you whatever you want.
Whatever we want, eh?
anything.
Pay off our taxes, yeah?
Deal.
Give us even more money after paying for our taxes, eh?
Consider it done.
Build us a railway from Montreal all the way to us, the Pacific Coast deal.
Deal.
Canada, can you give us a minute? This seems too good to be true. A railway would take forever. One last thing, and we join Canada.
Back already?
Give us the railway.
Yes.
But it must be done in 10 years.
That is a tough one, but deal. We will make it work. That is how dedicated we are to making a unified Canada.
Yay!
Oh wow, that's actually pretty neat. Maybe Canada isn't so boring after all.
Did you say something, Kevin? I didn't hear what you said.
Never mind.
Wait, what about the 1880s?
Isn't that the time when the Canadian anthem was made?
Yes, that is correct, Rajesh. This was the first national anthem that Canada had, and is called...
Oh, Canada.
Yeah, correct. This was a big moment because it united Canada and distinguished it from other countries since it had a chant that made it one.
What about the 1890s?
Did you know that in America, a president is only allowed two terms of 4 years? But in Canada, you are allowed as many terms as you'd like. John A. Macdonald was elected for his first consecutive election in the 1890s. But
what?
he died 3 months later.
That's quite sad. He seems to be a great guy since he made the country that we know now, and also led the country towards a path of autonomy.
Actually, it wasn't quite the same country that we know it now. Because in the 1900s, Alberta and Saskatchewan were created and put in place in Canada.
Dag nabbit, it actually took such a long time for Canada to be like the one we know today.
That's true. My throat is quite raspy, son. Why don't you take over for the 1910s?
Okay. It began on August 4th, 1914, when Britain dragged Canada into the war. Due to Canada's status as a colony, they were forced to join. But Canada took the opportunity with both arms open. They were involved in the Battle of the Somme.
Passchendaele, son.
Oh, Passchendaele. Passchendaele and Remy Ridge, with those events in particular showing their great military achievements. One of the proudest moments in Canadian history was when Canada captured Remy Ridge back for the French, and the French have called that section Canadian land as a way of saying thanks.
Well, at least the French are good for something.
Anyways, what happened in that war was pivotal to Canada going along the path of autonomy because Canada signed the Treaty of Versailles as its own nation, not a part of Britain.
But to what extent did Canada gain its autonomy?
To an extent where Canada was becoming recognized as its own country and power, which they showed in their military achievements during war and how they were recognized by being given a seat at the Treaty of Versailles.
That's quite an extent.
Let's move on to World War II.
Dad, can I read again?
Sorry, Jimmy, but now we're going to have to hear from Kevin over here, who I heard excelled on the socials test.
Yeah, fine. When the World War II began, despite Canada being known as the weaker army of World War I, through the interwars, Canada strengthened their autonomy and industrial productions. Eventually, Britain turned to Canada for reinforcement, and with Canada's strong industrial production, they were able to produce over 800,000 military transport vehicles for the war. In 1943, a war lashed out between the Germans and the Allies. And although the results did not directly affect the war, it greatly boosted Canadians' morale, and as it was considered one of the greatest victories Canada had. D-Day was also a memorable battle as the Canadians and the Americans planned a surprise attack on the Germans, which worked very successfully as they captured Groningen and they surrounded many cities which Germans were stationed in, and eventually they surrendered.
Very good, Kevin.
And lastly, the Normandy campaign was the final great campaign that happened in Europe. Starting with the Normandy invasion, Canada played an important role as they helped Americans close out the gap which the enemies were retreating to. so that the Germans could no longer escape and eventually leading to another surrender.
Before we head into the interwar years, which happened just between World War I and World War II, I think I should let you know that Canada had hit 14 million people for population in the 1950s.
Wait, why is that important?
That is just above the population of Ecuador right now.
So,
This showed that Canada was their own country with many people.
With many people, it showed that they're a powerful country.
The interwar years, which were between 1918 and 1939, pretty much when Canada hit puberty, which you guys haven't hit yet. But, let's start with the women's suffrage. The women's suffrage was led by the famous five. They asked the Supreme Court of Canada to answer the question, does the person in the British North American Act also include female rights?
It better have.
This led in the beginning of the women's suffrage movement. The five then created a petition for women to be able to vote and join the Senate, which then led women being able to vote in 1918.
That's how it should have been.
Now the King Bing affair is back, with puppets again.
I'm Mr. Bing.
And I am Mr. King. I want to push for more provincial rights and a focus on agriculture.
I do not agree with that. It looks like we have a crisis on our hand.
I am going to dissolve Parliament and inherit the tradition of elections.
Nani?
I am also going to try to redefine the role of Governor General.
It seems I've made a grave mistake. Canada is truly its own country, and not just a colony.
I'll do you one better. Let me slap the Balfour Declaration of 1926 on you, which will boost our independence, since the declaration stated that the communities within the British Empire are equal in status, and the position in Governor General will be redefined so that it does no longer serve as a direct representative of Britain.
No! Wow, Canada overcame a lot of challenges during the interwar years.
And that's the end of the interwar years.
That's interesting. What happened in 1960?
Something that showed Canadian political growth.
and what was that?
Do you know the Canadian political parties?
No.
You're
Conservatives, the Liberal, and the Green Party?
And the Bloc Québécois.
We'll talk about them later.
Oh, and the NDP?
That is correct. In 1961, the NDP was formed as a political party to create change in Canada.
So about the Bloc Québécois.
It's actually a very long story, including a kidnapping actually in October of 1970.
Wait, what?
Don't they not want to be a part of Canada?
That's correct. This actually has to do long before when people came to settle into Canada. France had conquered land, which was called Quebec, and England conquered pretty much everywhere else. This entire land became Canada. Remember, kids, this story was made very short.
Then why is there a political party?
If the Bloc Québécois wins the election, then they'll have control over the country pretty much, right? So they will give themselves justice for what happened in the past.
So they don't want to be a part of Canada?
In a sense, yeah. This event, instead of showing Canadian autonomy, it shows more of Quebec's fight for their own freedom.
So, how do we get all of the rights and freedoms we have today?
That's a very good question. You see, the Constitution Act of 1982 is when it all started and changed. Well, the Constitution Act of 1982 was proposed by Trudeau and was under big discussion from the beginning of the Quebec referendum on May 1980. The federal government promised Quebecers during the campaign that Ottawa would reopen constitutional negotiations. Shortly after, the Trudeau government decided to begin making the Constitution Act of 1982. The Charter of Rights protected people's rights and freedoms from being violated to any external or internal forces. Well, after Trudeau wanted to send a proposal to Britain to amend the BNA Act, which the Senate and House of Commons passed, but there was constitutional convention that Ottawa should ask for provincial support before asking Britain. It's affected the morale of the country heavily, as we now have our own rights written down, and no one can infringe on them, as we can point them out if someone attempts to. Some of the things that the Charter of Rights provides to everyone in the country is religion, freedom of religion through expression, freedom to move around in Canada, right to life, equality rights, and language rights. This is what makes our nation unique from the other around the world.
So now this is the country that we know, right?
Actually, just before the turn of the century, we gained our final addition to Canada, a new territory.
Nunavut?
That is correct. In 1999, Nunavut joined Canada, which gave us 10 provinces and 3 territories.
Wow, that was not that long ago. I thought Canada's pretty old.
Why are you so sad, old chap?
I'm sad because I want to live in a place that's diverse and respectful, and a place to start a family of my own liking.
What if I told you about a place no man, woman, or child are judged on their race, religion, color, creed, or sexual orientation?
I've never heard of such a place. Surely it can't be real.
Look down.
It's just a piece of paper.
Look again.
It's a Canadian passport.
You're welcome, my son.
Honey, I'm home.
Dad! Where were you?
I dropped the first apple, so I had to get another one.
God. You know, I'm so happy that we live in a place where we can express our true personalities and our true characteristics.
Me too.
Come on, kids.